evening and welcome to the regular RTM meeting on Tuesday, May 29th, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first matter is number 2, to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 23rd. Oh, I'm sorry. Will the clerk please call the roll? Sorry, Betsy.
That's okay. Petey Ambrose. Ed Bateson. Nancy Lefkowitz. Keith Varian. Bill Gerber. Aaron Lopez. Eric Newman. Cindy Perham. Heather Dean. Alex Durrell. Matt Jacobs. Sharon Pastilli. Alice Kelly. Frank O'Reilly. Phil Pierce.
Here.
Marcy Spallier. Josh Garskoff. Joe Siebert. Ruth Smay. Jay Wolk. Matt Ambrose. Steve Barretts. Hannah Gale. Lisa Havey. Lauren Bove. Mark McDermott. Jill Vergara. Karen Wackerman. Carrie Burcham. Pamela Iacono. Christine Messina. Pete Tellman. Brian Farnan. Drew Georgiadis. Doreen Herron. Margaret Horton. Sam Cargill. Michael Hurley. Frank Batiste. Eric Sonman.
Okay. Number 2, to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 23rd, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Dean, seconded by Representative Wackerman. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Next, number 3, to receive an update from the H. Smith Richardson Clubhouse Building Committee. We heard this in our committee presentation last week. Number 4, to hear, consider, and act upon a Greater Bridgeport Regional Recycling Interlocal Agreement. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Ambrose, seconded by Representative Kelly. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Next, number 5, to consider and act upon the following appointments to the Roger Sherman Elementary School Building Committee as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Patrice A. Klein, Eric Lang, Meredith McCormack, Brian Papini, Alex Plitzis, Richard Speciale, and Jenna Trotzer. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Vergara, seconded by Representative Dean. I think that Mr. Papini and Mr. Plitzis are in the audience tonight. Please come forward and address the RTM. You can take the microphone and then just briefly introduce yourself to the body.
Good evening. My name is Brian Papini. I'm putting myself up for election for this renovation to Roger Sherman. I've been a resident all my life here, born and raised, as my family, and we're also locally here. I have over 25 years of experience in construction, seeing all facets from renovations, commercial, residential, hospitality, and I think that this would be a good way for me to get involved with the community.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you. You can be seated. Mr. Plitzis?
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Alex Plitzis. I put my name in for this committee. My kids will be attending Roger Sherman in the coming year or so. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to get involved. Ran for this body unsuccessfully about a year ago. Wanted another opportunity to serve. Spoke to First Selectman Tetra, who's kind enough to put my name forward for consideration, and appreciate the opportunity to serve. Full-time, I work in business consulting. I run the aerospace defense vertical for a management firm. I've overseen 2 or 3 large-scale construction projects, mostly overseas, but I think the task here is pretty clear to execute the task in accordance with the will of this body and the Board of Selectmen. So, pending any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. You may be seated. Is there any further discussion on item number 5, which includes all of the appointments to the Roger Sherman Elementary School Building Committee? Seeing none, we'll move to the public. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, back to the body. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Number 6, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that the bond resolution entitled "A Resolution Appropriating $1,500,000 for costs associated with the planning, design, and obtaining cost estimates for the renovation and expansion of Mill Hill Elementary School and the cost of relocation of temporary classrooms installed at Mill Hill Elementary School, and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, be and hereby is approved." Do I have a motion to approve? Michael Hurley with enthusiasm. Seconded by Representative Sundman. Is there any discussion on this item? Representative Sundman.
Good evening. Eric Sundman, RTM District 10. I just want to say I definitely will be voting on this tonight. It's been long overdue. I've watched Mill Hill School over the last 11 years. Need this project badly. I've toured the school over the years with several PTA presidents, and there's been many of the same issues that have not been resolved, and I'm looking forward to a renovation. Thank you.
Is there further discussion from the body? Representative Lopez.
Hi, Erin Lopez, District 2. I just wanted to say that I know some Mill Hill parents, and I know that they've been waiting for this a long time. They've been very patient, and I support this, and I think this is a good first step for the renovation for the school.
Further discussion from the body. Representative Patisse.
Thank you. Frank Patisse, District 10. I just want to say I'm also very pleased with this project. It needs to move forward. The school's long overdue for a renovation, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Further discussion from the body? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Seeing none, back to the body. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Number 7, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that the bond resolution entitled "A Resolution Appropriating an additional $64,925 for costs associated with the design of the Duck Farm Road Bridge over the Mill River and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, be and hereby is approved." Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Dean, seconded by Representative Smay. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Number 8, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolved that the bond resolution entitled "A Resolution Appropriating $866,818 for the costs associated with the acquisition and installation of a town-wide telephone system and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation as recommended by the Board of Selectmen." Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Iacono, seconded by Representative Pistilli. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Congratulations, Betsy. Number 9, to consider and act upon amendments to the tax relief for the elderly and disabled homeowners ordinance, section 95-7 to section 97-15.4 of chapter 95, article 3 of the Code of the Town of Fairfield, sponsored by the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee, Cynthia Parham, District 2, Mark McDermott, District 7, Jill Vergara, District 7, Peter Tallman, District 8, and Michael Hurley, District 10. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Wackerman, seconded by Representative Hurley. And again, we are voting on this item tonight. Is there any discussion on this item? Representative Vergara and Representative Hurley.
Thank you. Hi, Jill Vergara, District 7. I'm also serving as chair for the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee. When the committee first submitted these ordinance revisions to LNA 2.5 months ago in the beginning of March, we thought and hoped that these revisions to the eligibility requirements would be implemented for this season's applications. Unfortunately, it's May 29th, and the last day for applications to the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Programs were due May 15th. So these revisions that we are voting on today will apply to next year's applicants for the tax assessment year beginning October 1st, 2018. These changes do not apply to this year's applicants. The changes that we are making today to residency, occupancy, and delinquency requirements for eligibility in all three of the tax relief programs are important, and they will help not only administration of the programs, but will also make the program requirements more consistent with state and federal definitions, and will therefore make the application process easier and more transparent for all of our seniors. These are good changes, and I'm really proud of the committee for working together, coming to consensus, and bringing this forward. It bears stating that last term's Tax Relief Committee had not held its first meeting by this time in 2016. We're working together in a bipartisan and diligent manner, and that gives me great hope for the work we will do for Fairfield in the coming months. If we continue this open dialogue and working together, I know that we will effect important and necessary changes to improve these programs and help our seniors stay in town. The revisions we make today are just a piece of the work that we have to do. Once we accomplish these revisions, we can roll up our sleeves and tackle more substantive provisions that can really have an impact on how much relief a senior is given in our town and how many seniors will receive this relief in town. Thank you.
Very well said. The only thing I would add is at the last meeting, Jill and I did indicate that there would have to potentially be a further amendment to the ordinance to add in an effective date for year end. But given that the current application period is over, it really would be duplicative, and the town attorney said that it's not necessary. So look, we're working together, trying to make improvements to the senior and disabled tax ordinance, and I hope everybody supports these modest amendments tonight.
Thank you both. Further discussion from the body on this item? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Next is number 10, to consider and act upon an ordinance regarding tax abatement for low or moderate income housing, sponsored by Eric Newman, District 2, Alex Durrell, District 3, Phil Piers, District 4, Jill Vergara, District 7, Karen Wackerman, District 7, and Carrie Burcham, District 8. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Cargill, seconded by Representative Georgiadis. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Next, number 11, to hear and consider for the first time an ordinance concerning the safe discharge of firearms within the town of Fairfield, sponsored by Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1, Phil Piers, District 4, Ruth Smay, District 5, Jill Vergara, District 7, and Karen Wackerman, District 7. Again, we're just discussing this tonight. It'll hold over another month for a vote. Is there any discussion from members of the body on this item? Representative Lefkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. The ordinance concerning the safe discharge of firearms within the town of Fairfield proposes to regulate the discharge of firearms in the town of Fairfield as a measure of additional protection of public peace and safety for Fairfield residents. This local ordinance, similar to, although in some cases less restrictive than, ordinances that exist in surrounding towns, such as Stamford, Greenwich, Trumbull, Darien, Norwalk, Westport, and Wilton, will allow the police department to have additional authority over an issue that is of increasing concern to Fairfield residents, namely non-hunting and non-crime-related gunfire. This is, by and large, already an issue subject to state regulation, and this ordinance aims to codify at the municipal level what is common sense. After months of research and careful review of state regulations, court decisions, local ordinances, and town codes, and with counsel from the town attorney and with bipartisan support from this body, as well as gun owners and our first selectman, the RTM members sponsoring this ordinance determine language and parameters that are relevant to Fairfield residents and in the best interest of our public health and safety. I would like to extend heartfelt thanks to our Chief of Police, Gary McNamara, for working closely with me on this ordinance. The ongoing safety of this community is of tantamount importance to our chief. His tenacity, perseverance, and commitment to our well-being is evident and appreciated. Thanks to Fairfield resident and Westport's Chief of Police, Fody Kaskinas, for his support of this ordinance. The collaboration between our communities and the strength of the relationship between these two chiefs of police is a great asset to the overall well-being of our constituents. Increasing frequency of complaints about the sound of gunfire in residential neighborhoods, as well as complaints that some residents had set up haphazard shooting ranges in their backyards, prompted members of the Public Health and Safety Committee, of which I am vice chair, and other members of this body to develop an ordinance that would help solve a specific problem for our police department. Currently, there is nothing in our town code regulating the discharge of firearms. Courts in Connecticut have ruled that statutes implicitly preempt municipalities from passing ordinances regulating firearm sales and hunting, but municipalities are allowed to pass ordinances to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of their citizens. And as such, several towns, as stated previously, have ordinances concerning various aspects of firearm use, such as the discharge of firearms, firearm use in residential areas, and regulations on range safety, gunfire noise, and target practice. For clarity, there is no current law, state law, that specifically prohibits a homeowner from discharging firearms on his or her own property. While other state laws might apply in some events of random firearm discharge, this ordinance specifically adds a layer of additional and desired jurisdiction for our police department. An overview of the state's hunting laws can be found on Connecticut's Department of Energy Environmental Protection's website, if you're interested. Legal hunting is not impacted by this ordinance, but under the new rules of this ordinance, annual written notice will be a requirement for anyone intending to hunt or granting permission to hunt on their property. Without alienating hunters, this allows all residents to make more informed decisions about when they spend time outside during hunting season and when and how they let their children play and pets play freely in their backyard. Additionally, an annual review by the Chief of Police or by his or her designee will enable the ordained authority to permit a shooting range on private property. As a body, we have the potential to avoid tragic accidents here in Fairfield through preventive measures such as this ordinance. Thank you.
Is there further discussion from members of the body? Representative Iacono.
Thank you. Pamela Iacono, Representative District 8. Thank you to all who have worked on this and all the feedback that's been given. I think by and large this is supported by the entire RTM. However, in having discussions in my caucus, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Representative Lefkowitz, number 5, by any person hunting who is legally authorized to hunt under the provisions of the Connecticut General State Statutes, any regulations issued thereunder in such places and such manner as is authorized under state statutes and regulation, including open space of the town subject to the regulations of the Conservation Commission of the town, provided, however, hunting is strictly prohibited on any other land owned or leased by the town, including but not limited to public beaches or parks. I'm wondering if you're open to speaking with one or two of our representatives. We have some suggested language just to simplify this. I don't believe it changes the substance of it, but there are many of us that found this very verbose and confusing, and in the interest of keeping it simple, we were wondering if you would be amenable to working with one or two of our members on just codifying that particular paragraph. Really simplifying it is what we're asking. So that's our only suggestion and anticipated possible amendment if you're willing to hear us out. Thank you.
Further discussion from members of the body? Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. One of the things we spoke about in committee is bringing attention to all of these ordinances that we have and are currently working on the RTM. And I was just, well, I guess through you, Moderator Piers, to the first selectman, not necessarily a question, but just a comment. Could you give some thought as to how the town can more creatively or more proactively get information out on new ordinances? I mean, we had the noise ordinance last year. I think we had the dog feces ordinance. Term prior, I think we did the door-to-door salesman ordinance. And I find that people in town don't always know what the ordinances are. So if you could just give some consideration. I don't expect you to have an answer tonight, but maybe you could come back to the body. Thank you.
Further discussion from members of the body? Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I'd like to speak in favor of the ordinance in the language that it is currently written in. This ordinance has been passed through the police chief. There are about 8 departments that the ordinance has been sent to. Feedback has been received, and I defer to the knowledge of specifically the police chief who read all of this document, and I respect the Republican caucus for their need to simplify it, but we want this ordinance to be enforceable, and clarity might take a few extra words, but clarity is very important for an ordinance for enforcement, and for that reason I support it as written. Thank you.
Further discussion from the body? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment? Yeah. Please come up, you in the front. Actually, Chief, why don't, I'm sorry, Chief. Okay. Yeah.
All right, everybody here? Okay. Mr. Moderator, I'm David Sturgis, 375 Warner Hill Road, Southport. Count me in favor of this ordinance proposal, as Representative Lefkowitz has drafted it. It's appropriate both to underscore top safety rating, just announced for Fairfield, and for domestic tranquility and peace in residential areas. In my Mill Hill neighborhood, more and more, particularly on weekends, late at night, rifle and shotgun reports can be heard, not to mention fireworks. The traditional not after sunset and not before sunrise our generation was brought up to respect is increasingly disregarded. We evidently now need to reimpose this respect against the social media-driven show-off of weapons, both by adults evidently not trained and their children evidently not always watched and supervised. It's a fitting, upfront position the town should take, that the party-hardy, boompa-boompa music, followed by weapons noise, are a risky nuisance, and the gun and violence culture behind it should be brought to heel. And finally, I say so as a longtime resident, military veteran, and registered owner who was behind the drive to take the NRA leadership to school for an overdue constitutional history and civics lesson around the preservation of Second Amendment rights, back to responsibility it once had, and away from money grub arms lobbying in Congress. Starting with home rule, this ordinance is all part of the action we owe to our young gun violence victims and as well to ourselves. Thank you.
Chief McNair.
I should have went first. I just have three comments really from my perspective. The first being many years ago we found ourselves in a position where an individual took up a firearms range in his yard. And while he had the property for it, and while the requirement to be a certain foot away from any building was met, we really found ourselves without any regulatory ability to analyze it and consult safely to ensure that if that was going to be done and he had the proper area and it was properly backstopped and whatnot, at least we have some ability to do that. That problem has been resolved. However, that's not to say that the problem couldn't come up again. In addition, number two, what we find ourselves oftentimes responding to are reports of gunfire. And when our officers go, oftentimes that gunfire is from hunters. And people calling up saying, I hear gunfire in the neighborhood. This allows us the ability to maybe lessen those number of calls. If there's dialogue between neighbors where they're saying, hey, be advised, I'm allowing hunting as I can do on my property, and there's a whole bunch of state regulations when hunting can be done, maybe that would eliminate some phantom calls of saying, I hear gunfire. I mean, to the extent that we also in the police department last year in our range, we were conducting our firearms range and didn't do a good enough job of notifying neighbors, and we got a lot of calls of concerns from people hearing gunfire incessantly occurring. So we also are responsible for notifying people to lessen some of that concern. Number three, while I appreciate the amount of faith that people put in me and my ability to read documents, I am certainly not a lawyer, nor do I understand all the legalities of verbiage in a regulation. So I would encourage you that if there are some debate about language, you know, I certainly don't mind being part of that discussion, but certainly don't rely on my analysis solely for some legality issues of enforcement rules. So if there's concerns, that's certainly something that I would not be offended to have other eyes look at it. So thank you.
Thank you. Further comment from members of the public?
Hi, Michelle McCabe. I'm at 3845 Park Avenue, Unit 2. And I just want to say thank you to Nancy Lefkowitz, but also the bipartisan support for this ordinance. I actually was someone that experienced the sound of gunshots while at a book club in a very, very residential neighborhood, which resulted in a bloodied raccoon running across said book club. And it was during the summer when my boys would be outside playing potentially tag or running around, and it was very nerve-wracking, made worse when we found out that there was really nothing that the police could do about it. So I commend this body for taking the time to look at what other communities are doing and together to decide to put this ordinance forth. So thank you very much.
Further comment from members of the public?
Thank you again. Alex Pleitz, 78 Cambridge Street. Just to address a point that was made by the last two speakers, both the chief and the woman who just spoke. When I heard the ordinance as written, it spoke about notifying the neighbors in the vicinity, but in both cases it sounded like people who were walking by the property and heard gunshots, or someone who was in the vicinity but was not a neighboring property owner would not have been notified in the event that hunting was determined to have taken place on the property. So possible consideration for an amendment might be to place signs on the edges of the property notifying the public that hunting is actually taking place, so that the public is also notified in addition to the immediate neighbors. If the concern is generally public peace and whatnot, which I believe was cited when the discussion was originally considered. So that's my one suggestion for an amendment, and I say that not only as a combat veteran and also as a responsible gun owner, but I also see absolutely no reason to be discharging a firearm within the limits of the town of Fairfield. It doesn't make any sense. So whatever can be done to sort of, I guess, encourage the rest of the public to be aware of what's going on, I would consider that for an amendment if possible. That's it.
Further comments from members of the public?
Good evening. My name is Mark Antar. My wife Ashley and I moved to Fairfield about 1.5 years ago, and in October of last year we were blessed by the birth of our first child, Ethan. We're thrilled with the prospect of raising our son in Fairfield. When we received the notification, the email notification from our friend and neighbor Nancy Lefkowitz, and read the proposed ordinance, we felt it was critical at least one of us show up and voice our support. Since we moved here from Brooklyn, one of our favorite things to do is to spend time in our backyard playing with our dogs or just sitting out and relaxing. We are so happy that our son will be able to play outdoors once his fat little legs can carry him. However, the occasional sound of gunshots, including most recently multiple shots 2 weeks ago in the middle or about 11 o'clock at night, really shake us to our core. We could hear it very clearly. The dogs bark, the baby cries. Simply put, shooting guns in a residential neighborhood threatens the safety of other residents in the neighborhood, including young children and pets. I understand that enacting laws involves a weighing of pros and cons, but I fail to see how the benefits of being able to shoot guns at home, not for defense but simply for recreation, outweigh the terrible tragedy that will result from an accident or worse. It may be fun to some, it is very dangerous to us all. Also, I just want to say as a lawyer, I appreciate the way that this is written, especially Section 3, which is a restriction with some exceptions. I think that that's the right way to do it, and I support the way it's written. I support the ordinance as written. Thank you.
Sir, can you please give the town clerk your address?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. 3060 Reading Road in Fairfield.
Thank you. Further comment from members of the public?
Hi, I'm Yvonne Zeisler, and I live at 316 Hoydens Lane in Fairfield, and it is very close to the shooting range. I'm not talking about the shooting range today, although we are, in the last 2 years, we have been notified when the shooting takes place, which is wonderful when we get that notification. But I've been woken up many times, and just within the last month I called the police, and I meant to call and find out what the date was, but out of sleep woken up from gunshots, and I called right away and said, are they using the range on a Saturday at 6 o'clock? And they were like, no, they're not using the range. So they did send a car out, but I'm not sure if anything happened from it. But it is really scary when you get woken up, you know, out of a sleep. And I would love to see when it is hunting season, because that's a big 90-acre open space area abutting Aquarian. And I know people have permits to hunt, but it would be great if there were signs out when that actually takes place. I mean, I've taken my son to school in the morning and seen guys coming out of private property wearing full ammo and not guns, but arrows. But still, it's a little disconcerting when my son's like, Mom, look at that. You know, that is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And I spoke to the owner of that property, and they said they absolutely had no permission to be shooting there, hunting there. So it would be wonderful to know when the hunting does take place and if there were signs put up. And thank you to the police department for notifying our neighborhoods when the shooting range is being, used by police legitimately. Thank you.
Further comment from members of the public?
Hi, Pat Hobart, 10 Alden Street. And I just wanted to voice my support for the ordinance concerning the safe discharge. I live in, as you know, close by the area, and have 2 young kids as well. And anything we can do to make the area safer has my support 100%. So just wanted to voice that, and thank you, Nancy, and thank you everyone else for your hard work on it. Thanks.
Further comment from members of the public? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body. Representative Iacono.
Thank you, Representative Iacono, District 8. I just wanted to thank the chief for his comments and recognizing that this is not a political issue. Our caucus is not looking to make it a Republican versus Democrat issue at all. We are working in a very bipartisan fashion thanks to what was put forward, and I know Representative Lefkowitz has been extremely amenable to that. We're just simply have some suggestions on item number 5 that will hopefully make it easier for the ordinance to be understood and read. There is no one in our caucus who is seeking to change the substance of the ordinance, and I appreciate Representative Lefkowitz and Chief McNamara for recognizing that our suggestion is bipartisan and it is not a Republican versus Democrat issue at all. This is for Fairfield. We are working for Fairfield, and we are trying to keep this ordinance simple so that Fairfielders understand it. Thank you.
Further discussion from members of the body? Representative Lefkowitz.
Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. And I just, through you, Mr. Moderator, wanted to address Representative Iacono's comments and say that 100% I am open to listening to the suggestions and hearing from the caucus and taking into consideration and having a discussion for clarity's sake. The point is to get something passed that we can get as close to 100% support as possible. So I just wanted to acknowledge publicly that I am open to that conversation.
Further discussion from members of the body? Seeing none, we again don't vote on this tonight. We will vote next month. Number 12, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting in which may be properly acted upon under the rules of the representative town meeting. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Representative Durrell, seconded by Representative Walk. We're adjourned. Thank you.